Guys, thank you for coming. This is cool. This is the first open installment of Ed's Audio Jedi training, where we'll be learning to use the Force to record. I'm just kidding. No, we're not. But so this is actually something I've done in years past, and it's we cram a lot of information into our curriculum, and it's a lot of stuff over 5 years or 2 years, whether you're undergrad or grad student. But I always feel like there's little small things that tend to sometimes slip through the crack. And so one of the things that, back when I first started doing these, I really wanted to address that and tackle some certain things that are really, really important, to audio engineers in general, and things that when you get in the field, like sometimes people consider this to be just common knowledge. Things that you should know about how to do these certain things, and they're not typically taught in a textbook. They're not taught in a class per se. So that's kind of the goal of tonight and these series in general, is to give you guys a little extra ammunition, to get to the next Jedi level, right? So tonight we're gonna talk about Hammond organ, and I'd like to introduce a very special guest. We've got Mr. Kraig Greff here. Kraig is a local music professional. You can clap for him if you want. So Kraig has been, a musician for quite a while. Yep.
I'm 59. So I've been a musician since I've been 5, so you do the math. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career and what you've done?
I sprouted wings when I was 7. No, I didn't. Started playing accordion at just before my 5th birthday, and my dad bought us a Wurlitzer. He was a car mechanic. And I started playing the accordion and a piano and an organ all about the same time. The results are fuzzy because I was this asthmatic kid in this room with this filtration system. And I think my dad used every last dollar he had to put that together. But some way I weaseled this Wurlitzer 4300 organ. And it only had a small amount of bass pedals. And then I found out about the Hammond B3 as I got a little bit older and played, and I thought, I want one of those. Well, the price difference, there's quite a bit of difference in price. Got a used one, then I finally got my own new one, and it was like, it was really something. And I've been playing the Hammond for years and years and years and years. It's one of the greatest instruments ever put on the face of the earth. I mean, I have a 9-foot Steinway in my house, and I was with Barry White for 4 or 5 years, and that's the money that there's a lot of people put that money into their nose, and I took it and bought a Steinway piano with the help of my wife, and so we still have it, and it's a great instrument. And for that instrument, I traded a 5.8 Baldwin or 5.10 Baldwin, a Hammond B3 in perfect condition like this one, which I still miss, and a big wad of cash. So anytime Ed says, hey, do you want to do anything with a Hammond? I'm there. I don't care what it is, playing one note or, they're just great. And I've got a studio, and I've got all the Nords. I've got a couple 3 Nords, and I've got all the Hammond wannabes, and it sounds like a Hammond. And a lot of times it's kind of, it'd be stupid. I live in Fells Point. It'd be kind of stupid to take a Hammond B3 and put it in there, although my wife is thinking we could eat off of like a kitchen table or something. But it'd be kind of stupid to put a Hammond in there for the sessions because, but there's really nothing in my book that says, there's nothing that sounds like them. They sound they're magnificent pieces of work. There's nothing that sounds like them. I've been playing one for years. I did a CD that I'm going to give one to everybody so you can take it home and listen to what. It's a kind of a jazz pop thing. It's, a couple friends of mine from Berkeley and Boston came down to play on it. And guitar player from up in Delaware, a friend of mine. And it's pretty good. I mean, considering it's a nice studio we recorded in, but we only had like 3 days to record the whole thing and mix it. So it would have been a lot better if I'd have had 4 or 5 weeks, but I don't have that kind of uncompromising wallet. So it is what it is. It's still good. It really is. It's pretty cool.
I think it's great. I think it's great.
I mean, I listened to it the other night. Somebody had it on at a party, and I'm like, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I know that tune. That's me." You know. So I haven't listened to it every day. So I listened to it. It was pretty okay. But you know, so I've been playing music a long time. So
Very cool.
Ed asked me to do the thing with the Hammond. Yeah.
Yep, Craig's gonna help us out tonight. He's gonna play some stuff for us and give us some demonstrations. So one of my basic philosophies with audio engineering in general, I feel like a lot of the time we get a lot of instruction on, well, this is where you put the microphone, right? And I can't tell you how many times I've run into engineers who feel like, well, all I need to know is where to put the microphone. Well, okay, that's very useful information. Yes, a lot of what we do revolves around where we put the microphone. There's more to it than that. We spend a lot of time here talking about communication, right? And being able to, communicate with our clients. So, the ability to talk music, right? To be able to talk to your client about the music that they're playing and have that not be a barrier between us being an engineer and them being a musician. There's more to it. There's more to that. One of the things that these lectures are going to focus on is, the ability to kind of develop more of a language, more of a detailed language. Like, can you speak Hammond? Right? Can you speak electric guitar? These are things that are going to take you to the next level. Understanding how these things work is going to definitely give you street cred, okay? Right? It's definitely going to basically, if you can come in and say to somebody, or even direct them on how to use this thing, or whatever it might be, or, it's just going to get you so much further. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, starting from the ground up. I always believe that one of the best ways to learn about something is to start from the very beginning. How does it work? You guys all know my two favorite words are
signal flow.
Right? So that still comes into play here, right? But whether it's Hammond organ or it's electric guitar or bass or drums or whatever it might be, understanding the instrument from the ground up is key. I've spent a lot of time, actually, just a good example of this. I took vocal lessons for 4 years just so I could learn how to record vocals better. I'm not going to go out and win American Idol anytime soon.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. I have to admit. However, it taught me so much to be able to just talk to vocalists, right? Or even just be able to sit down with them and do, kind of warm-up things with them, exercises. So expand what you know about this stuff. It is not just about the microphones and what gear we're plugging into, right? Understand what's going on the other side of things too. So
if you've got a Hammond player in the studio and you want a certain thing out of him, you have to be able to tell the Hammond player,
yep.
Make it sound like an old Jimmy McGriff thing, or can you do a Jack McDuff thing, or do a thing like Brian Auger. Brian Auger was a rock organist, but he's also a very talented organ player. I mean, he plays a lot of classical, and who's the guy? Keith Emerson. Mm-hmm. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I mean, they all played Hammonds, but they all have a very distinctive style. So you need to kind of, if you want to talk to the Hammond player, you want to be able to tell him, kind of give me a Brian Auger. Brian Auger had definitely a certain kind of style he had, and a setting on the Hammond, all the drawbars pretty much out, and a big rock sound, Santana. So you have to be able to do that.
Yep.
If you can't do it, it goes against you.
Yep. Or even more specific, be like, hey, let's try percussion on that passage, or let's try a little more of the higher upper drawbars on that, or something, right? Make these suggestions.
You got to know what the instrument does.
Exactly. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is kind of where this guy came from, right? Hammond organ's been around a long time. The inventor was Lawrence Hammond. Lawrence Hammond was an inventor in the early 1900s. His probably most famous, well, I shouldn't say most famous, or probably biggest invention that he ever came up with was actually a motor. Lawrence Hammond came up with a motor, which he called a synchronous motor. The synchronous motor was something that would lock onto whatever frequency of voltage you were giving it, right? So what's the frequency we get out of our walls?
60 hertz.
60 hertz, right? So, Lawrence Hammond said, well, hey, I've got this motor that locks on and just basically locks on rock solid onto 60 hertz. What would be the most logical application for that? Well, he thought of something first.
I know, man.
This guy. He actually built clocks. He's like, I've got a synchronous motor that clocks to 60 hertz, right? I can make really accurate clocks. And that's what he did. That was the very first thing he started doing was clocks. So this is actually a real Hammond clock,
Oh, wow.
which uses the synchronous motor design. And I got to open it up and check it out. It's kind of funky right now, but when I first got it,
Where'd you get that?
I got it on eBay. I was like,
Oh, okay. So
yeah, it
you
was
were,
like-
yeah.
it was-
You knew what you were looking for.
I knew what I was looking for.
Okay.
I wanted a real Hammond clock, like this is probably from, I would say late 1930s, early 1940s, somewhere around there. And this was like kind of a common clock that you would see.
You know, Lawrence Hammond died in 1973.
Yep.
I just thought.
Yep. That's how long he lasted. So his clock design was very popular, and the Lawrence Hammond Clock Company was huge. But he was constantly inventing new things. He was trying to think of like, well, what could be another application of this motor? And he said, well, since it's so stable and it locks on to this certain frequency, I could build an instrument, a musical instrument, that would be run off of my synchronous motor. And that's where he got the idea for the Hammond organ. Okay? The original Hammond organ that he designed was the Model A, right? We're used to hearing about B3, C3. There's A series, like A100 series, but there was a Model A organ, which was the very first one that he designed. However, they all worked off of the same exact principle. They used his synchronous motor to turn basically what was a series of what are called tone wheels. They're basically small, about a $50 size wheel that had basically bumps on the end, or on the outside edge. Okay? And the spacing of those bumps would determine what frequency that tone wheel would produce. Right? So basically what they would do is he took his tone wheel and he had a magnet and a coil. Tone wheel would turn, those grooves would go further and closer to that magnet, and via what type of process?
Induction.
Thank you, Gabe. Induction, right? We would basically induce a voltage, right, at a certain frequency based on those the indentations or grooves on the outside of the wheel. Pretty ingenious, and all this was powered off of his synchronous motor. So, in order to reproduce all the tones that he had to come up with a lot of different wheels. Okay, so the heart of any kind of Hammond organ is the tone wheel generator, right? And that is a huge piece of block of metal. And actually, you can see it in here. Let me turn on my trusty flashlight here. This guy right here, that spans from here all the way down to here, right there, is the tone generator. Weighs probably a good 100 pounds. All right? There are 96 tone wheels in there, all kind of jerry-rigged together with a lot of little gears and everything like that make them all spin at a constant rate. Each one produces a different tone. All right? So basically the way this works, and you can see like sticking out the end here, these are the magnetic pole pieces for the pickups for each individual tone wheel.
So does that mean the Hammond has a range of 96 like somewhat half steps?
So not 96 half steps. So basically what we have is two 61 key manuals, but we'll get into that a little bit more about how the tone wheels come into place. It has to do with basically different harmonics that it's producing. Okay, so that's why there's so many. There actually.
That's the drawbars. We'll show you the drawbars and how the harmonics are done.
Yep. So basically, what we see back here, we've got kind of a big mess of things. I left this back off because it is pretty cool. Lots and lots of wires, right? Fixing one of these guys is no joke.
There was a guy when I was on the road, I carried this thing with me doing one-nighters in a long time ago. I played one-nighters with this. Like, so I'd play Saturday, use the Hammond, put it back in my van. Sunday, another gig in New York, take my Hammond. So there was a guy, there's a repairman, said there's only 6 things that can probably ever break on this. He showed me all 6 of these. He said, if you know how to repair these 6, you will probably be able to, and he says there's actually only 2 that really come into play most of the time. If you watch the other 4 being tubes and stuff like that, that's one of the 6. Pretty much it's an indestructible instrument. So that this thing really does last. I mean, there's a few wires when you take the drawbars in and out will come undone. And then there's a wire going down to that pedal. So this is the expression pedal, loud, soft.
Yep.
There's a wire that runs in there, that comes up there. That constant will bust that wire. That's the other one. Your Hammond will drop dead on you.
Yep.
But there's a couple other ones, and that's it. It's an
Yeah.
indestructible instrument, it really is.
So this particular Hammond organ is probably so the cabinet actually. So this guy's not a real B3, okay. It's an older cabinet. It's probably an older A series cabinet that someone took the insides of a B3 and transplanted it into here. So it's that doesn't mean it's not doesn't sound like a B3. It's exactly the same thing, but or it's not legitimate. We have to get rid of it. It's actually pretty much the same exact insides. What we're gonna do is we're gonna show you guys how to set this up first. All right, that's going to be the very first thing. Couple notes. You guys are transporting this thing, right? You know that you got these dollies on here, right?
It weighs 465 pounds without the dollies.
Yeah.
Just to let you know that.
Very heavy. So, you guys ever want to start weightlifting? Right? It's be a good time to do it, be able to move the Hammond around.
I could bench press a small car when I was a little bit younger. I still can.
I believe that.
It's heavy.
So we want to make sure that these guys are up on the dollies. You want to make sure that these legs are centered on here before you try moving it, right? If these legs are coming off, you got to stop and
Now.
recenter it because it's going to be really tough. Get someone to help you when you move this thing too. Okay. The dollies have some cool features. They have got handles on them, right? So that comes in really handy when you're starting to move this thing around. Okay. So we're gonna go through. I'm gonna turn this thing sideways because.
Don't have to get your feet underneath that thing either. That's
Yep. Just get your feet underneath it. So we're gonna put it a little bit like this, so we can kind of see what Kraig's doing when he plays and this up here. So lowering this guy, I'm gonna do one side at a time. Important thing, make sure these straps are still on before you raise and lower this. All right. We got a little handle down here. This will actually lower the organ down. Okay. Lower this guy down. There we go. Cool. And what I recommend when you're using this in the studio, it's usually not super necessary to remove all the straps completely, or even remove the dollies for that matter. I would basically put it in a spot where it's going to be, and it's usually just a lot easier to leave these on.
Yeah, you can keep the dollies on, put the bass pedals in it, it works fine.
What I usually do with the straps is I will loosen the side. There's a side over here. Just pull these off, these little tabs. Bring them around the end. Just tuck them over. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom one because we often use the bass pedals. And get this off here. There we go. Excellent. Thank you, sir. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the, I'm going to put the bass pedals on next. These, you guys need to exercise extreme caution when moving these around, okay? You notice it has these little tabs on here. These suckers are sharp.
They will go right through your hand.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
No joke. No joke.
Not like I've done it.
And they're also pretty delicate too. So you would just want to be really careful. Typically, if you guys are going to do a session, find out if you're going to really need the bass pedals or not. Some players will use them, some players will not. If you're doing a rock thing, chances are you're probably not going to need them.
Right.
So
If there's a bass player in the band, probably not. They're not going to compete with a Hammond bass player.
yeah.
So
Yep.
if there's a bass player coming in, you probably won't need the bass pedals.
Yeah, yeah. So find out, but again, just be very cautious. I recommend having 2 people when you're moving this. Okay. So the way this guy works is that these line up along the front here, and they. Eric, can you give me a hand for a second? So I recommend having 2 people. We're gonna lower it down like this. Just let it go like that, and I'm gonna basically put your end in first, like that.
Okay.
Cool. And then come forward and go right down to the floor. Good. So when this guy's on the floor, all we need to do is basically go ahead, lift up on that end. Yep, we're just gonna slide it in. Yep, keep going. There we go. And what will happen is the pedals will actually drop in.
Pull back, yeah, that's
Yep.
it.
There we go. There's like 2 little kind of pins that'll lock them in place. And then you should be good. These guys will work. Excellent. Bench fits right over that, like that. And from here, it's actually pretty simple. We're pretty close to being where we need to be. Cables for this guy live in the bench. Okay, so we can open this guy up. There are actually only 2 cables that we need to hook this up. It's a power cable, and then we're going to have a single cable, which is going to connect from the Hammond to our Leslie speaker. Okay, so I'm going to hook these guys up. Power is in the back here. And if you kind of look underneath the back corner here, you'll see a little power box. It's got a standard IEC receptacle. So we can plug that in. And it's on. And this guy goes into the same area as well. Typically, this little gray pigtail should stay connected to the Hammond. The guys pulled it apart last night. Oh, they took it out, which is fine. I just have to put it back in here. Just an amp connector that locks in.
Why you're looking at that thing up on the top?
It's actually right here.
Oh, okay. 'Cause
Yep.
it used to be down
Yeah, sometimes on the older ones they would put it down on the bottom rail
on
here.
that side, yeah.
The box
That's what
here.
as long as you up on the top there. Okay, cool.
Yep, that's where this guy goes.
What's the purpose of the little extender pigtail thing?
It's just an interface to get to the adapter box for the Leslie. Interesting fact, the Leslie speaker was not standard equipment with the Hammond organ. It was not made by Hammond at all. Matter of fact, Lawrence Hammond didn't like them. And
It was invented by a guy by the name of Donald Leslie.
yep,
And he built the Leslie because he didn't like the sound of the speaker that came with a Hammond. And he wanted the organ he built to sound more like a pipe organ that was in the store. You know, so he built this thing here so it would, but Hammond didn't want to sell his Leslie with the Hammond. So it was like the Hammond B3 and then the Leslie tone cabinet. You know, it was something completely separate.
yeah. Lawrence Hammond had very specific ideas about what he thought this should sound like. His original purpose for building this was to actually replace pipe organs in churches, be able to use electric organs, and comparatively, the cost of an electric organ versus a pipe organ is significant, right? So,
I'm trying to get those pipes put in your house for under
Yeah.
$500,000.
yeah. Oh, and that was the other thing too. There was
And
a
the
big,
house.
there was a big thing. Like it was actually a really cool thing to have an organ in your living room.
Yeah.
You know, so what Lawrence Hammond did was he had his Hammond organ, and they would come with a what he called the tone cabinet, which is really just a big amplifier and speaker.
That's it, just tone cabinet, yeah.
Yep. And Don Leslie, did not like that. He wanted to create an effect of playing a pipe organ, which, with a pipe organ, pipes, they come from all kinds of different places. So he came up with the idea of like, well, what if we spun the speaker around, right? And make sound come from different places. Well, he thought it worked. Reality, does it sound like a pipe organ more?
Yeah.
I don't think so, but
Thank the Lord.
yeah. But however, it created a pairing with the Hammond organ and the Leslie speaker that has just stayed, constant for forever, as long as since the beginning.
So
It's
when was
amazing.
when was the Leslie speaker made? Or originally made?
I want to say like it was late 40s, early
47,
50s.
I think.
Yep,
Okay.
somewhere around there.
I think 1947. And the first one was a 122. Then there's the 147. Well, I don't know which. I think it's a 147. Is this 147?
This is
a 122.
This is a 122.
And because the 147 was used.
With
Different people preferred different things.
Yeah,
I mean,
the difference was they were basically the same speaker, just they were designed for different organs to be paired with different organs. The 122 was the organ the speaker that was designed to work with the Hammond organ. Uses a balanced signal path to get signal from the Hammond to the speaker. The 147 is a version for other organs which uses an unbalanced signal path to get from the organ to the speaker. So you would typically see 147s get used for guitar players, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So continuing on, we're going to talk about the rest of the setup here. So I've got power hooked up. I have got my 6-pin cable connected to the output of the organ to the Leslie speaker.
and the joke is always have somebody try to turn this thing on.
Well, we've got people in here that could probably figure it out pretty quick, I'm sure. So, and actually, it's funny, they used this for the Peabody Youth Orchestra on Saturday, and I got a panic call. The organ's not working. There's no sound coming out. And they did figure out how to turn it on, but they couldn't get sound out of it. So
Well,
there are tricks to that. But one of the key things is Lawrence Hammond had a little bit of a problem with the design, right? He had this synchronous motor, right, that syncs to the voltage that you're inputting to it, right? So in this case, it's 60 hertz. One of the issues with it was that how do you start a synchronous motor, right? So that was one of the drawbacks. So with his clock, if you look in the back here, there's a little winder, right? So you have to kind of push it in, you have to spin it really fast, and that would get the motor going, okay? He had the same exact problem with the Hammond organ. So I guess one option would have been to put a crank on the side, right? But that probably would have looked pretty bad. Hang on, I got to start my organ. Right?
you don't want to ever even say that.
Yeah.
You just want to say something else. You don't want to get that on video either.
It already is. It's
We'll
too
edit
late.
that out. No.
It's classic.
I'm going to start my organ. No. I thought I was going to be the one
All
responsible.
right. No, I'm good with that.
Just a joke.
So what you'll notice is in the upper right-hand corner here, we've actually got two switches. Okay, and they actually are for two different motors. So there actually is a starter motor for the Hammond that is just to get it up to speed so that we can engage the synchronous motor and spin the tone wheels. So when you hit the proper sequence for this is to turn on the start motor first. And doing that, you'll hear
12 seconds of that.
Yep. So once you hear that motor spin up, while holding this on, you turn the other switch on. And then you can release the start.
And there she goes.
And there she goes.
Perfect job.
Yep. Interesting note too, so we have power going into the Hammond here. All right. Power is being transferred to the Leslie speaker and amplifier through that 6-pin cable. Okay. So there is a good healthy AC signal going through that cable as well as an audio signal. All right. So don't try to bite through it or anything like that. You will get shocked. All right. Cool. So that is how to get this guy started up. What we'll do next is take kind of a look at the how this guy's working. So I've got one going here.
You going fast now? There we go.
There we go. I just want to get the bottom going. There we go. That is as it should be.
So is the cable coming off of the organ also powering the spinning mechanism in the Leslie?
That is correct. Yep. Looks like I had a loose cable down there. Or a loose belt. That's okay. Make it work. Actually, we can adjust that.
Yeah, we gotta go in there with this.
Yep. Yep. So, all right, what I want to talk about now is, and actually maybe Kraig can kind of go through some of this, is like the setup on here. Like what each one of these drawbars does. Do you want to tackle that, Kraig? You want me to?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
These are presets. These right here. Well,
You guys can come on up, actually. Come on up, gather around.
These are presets right here. They have different sound. Sorry, I gotta remove my shoes. Well, even it's like your hands. You can feel the organ with your. I mean, if you have a shoe on, it just feels like you've got a glove when you're. Well, some people said I play like I've got gloves on, but that's okay. Okay, so this is different ways of arranging these drawbars are the way some of the organists, you know, the sounds like a Jimmy Smith, Jack McDuff. These are famous organ players, but basically, the 8 foot. Which one's the 8 foot?
So
Is this it here?
your fundamental. Yep, the
This
first
is
way.
fundamental. That's the tone. That's your sine wave that controls the tone of the organ. These here are, you'll see the 16 foot. I don't know what it says on the. They'll usually say it on the front. 16 foot, 8 foot.
They're labeled as organ stops, basically.
Okay,
like
and
different
basically
pipes.
they're just like pipes.
Yep.
So, you know, 16 foot pipe. Hear how it gets deep,
So that would be an octave below the fundamental.
right?
That would be a fifth above, right? So very interesting thing about that. What's happening here when we actually add the fifth above?
It's like treating the lowest one as the fundamental.
So we do this. So very interesting. We're actually adding it's like the missing fundamental type thing here, right? So we're taking our fundamental, we're adding an octave below, and we add a fifth above. We're actually using our missing fundamental psychoacoustic processing, right, to actually make that sound deeper than what it really is. Very cool.
Always remember, this is a big synthesizer, because what you're doing is you're taking sine waves and you're adding, so it's an additive synthesis. There's a keyboard you probably all heard of called the DX7, and all the process of that DX7 was invented by a guy out of Stanford by the name of John Chowning. But the process of additive synthesis, like a mini Moog, and that's subtractive synthesis. But additive synthesis when you start adding oscillation banks together. So, like you said, you're adding fundamentals, and you're adding a fifth above, and then you're adding partials. Which one's a partial?
So all the white ones are going to be octaves. Right?
Octaves, and these are partials. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. So if we go, you can see fundamental. And this one's not working right now.
Just a little chord. I'll show you that later, isn't it?
Well, no,
Oh, is that-
because
is that-
percussion's on.
Percussion's on?
There.
Oh,
it
there
is.
we
There you go. There you go, sorry.
So when percussion's on, this guy will not work. So you can see those are some of the harmonics that we have to work with, that we have to shape the sound. And then we can add in fundamental. Okay. And add an octave below. So we're basically using this harmonic sequence to basically create. The idea was to create any sound, right? So what I've got here, this
I'll play something after you do. I want to do that. I'm really interested in that myself.
this is the original manual for a Hammond
Original.
Original. This was actually, so I have my own Hammond at home, and this was actually this was actually in the seat still with the maintenance schedule still attached to the seat. And it has, I have the original envelope that was sent from the Hammond Organ Company containing this, which is really cool. But this is the original manual, and it shows, kind of basically how to use this guy, and explains all the drawbar functions, etc. Pretty amazing. But some kind of neat stuff that's in here is they show us, they kind of explain, how all of these drawbars work, right? And they also kind of equate it to what you would find on an organ, like a pipe organ as well, because that was really the kind of the market they were going after. Church organists who wanted to practice in their living room, right? So they would buy one of these, and that's how they would do it. And one of Hammond's selling points was to be able to reproduce any kind of tone. So they had different tone families, like flute.
Do the clarinet.
Yeah, so there's flutes, and this would show different drawbar settings to reproduce. Flute is like a single flute, light concert flute, several flutes together, okay? And then reeds, we would have oboe, trumpet, voice, like tone.
He had a vivid imagination, didn't he?
Yeah. So what we would do is, you notice how the drawbars have numbers on them. So what they would give us is drawbar registrations. Okay? So to produce a clarinet tone, we would use 00, 7272, and then 420. So that was a clarinet, and back then people were like, "Oh my god, it's a clarinet!" So,
If you close your eyes and drink enough, I can see where it might be kind of a, well, maybe, I don't know.
so that very interesting things.
Is that
Yeah, you can hear it.
It's there, I mean, there, it's better in a low register.
Yeah.
Right about there.
Yeah.
It's great, up four notes, it might be believable, the rest of it's just pure crap. It really is. But he's, like I said, vivid imagination.
Some other things that Hammond integrated into this were some special effects as well. So let's do the theater organ effect.
Okay.
So it's 8787.
7, 8, 7,
66.
6,
553.
5, 3.
And what he added was vibrato and chorus. And so he had switches to turn the vibrato and chorus on for each manual. So this setting would be a theater organ effect. You'll hear the vibrato. Like theater organ type one. So another very interesting thing, so they give you some basic shapes here. So like flute family would be something like this kind of shape with the drawbars. Reed family would be.
Let's just try it.
Yeah.
Let's experiment here. We're here, we've got the Hammond, why not?
Let's do it.
Well, let's read.
And then we got foundation family, which would be lower drawbars pulled out, everything going back in.
Something like that.
relatively weak upper.
Okay, string family. This is the interesting one here. Okay, strings. Okay. No, so basically like, what do you think, Ed?
So that's pretty close. Let's try. Still sounds like an organ. I don't know.
They all sound like an organ, but that's kind of the idea. It's not a trumpet. It's not. It takes a vivid imagination to imagine this.
I think Hammond might disagree with you.
Yeah,
Well,
Lawrence
yeah,
Hammond,
yeah.
that sounds like strings. He probably would. So there were also some special effects as well. So we had the vibrato and chorus, right? We have a registration here.
Do the dog bark.
You want to do the dog bark?
I haven't heard that myself.
So basically, dog bark is 0, 8, 8, and everything else is 0.
0, 8, 8.
And then it says play C, C sharp, and D above middle C. I think you got to play them all together.
What now?
And percussion normal, fast, and second.
Okay, percussion normal, fast, and second. Like that?
And a D.
And a D.
That would be a dog bark.
My dog my little dog ever started coming over sound like that right to the emergency room. That means he's got something trapped in his throat. Oh no!
Yeah, if you use your imagination, that could be a dog bark.
Okay,
So
alright.
this particular preset uses another like really important effect that's on the Hammond, which is percussion, right? If we were to push in these drawbars, well, you notice it adds a little bit of a percussive sound. What we're hearing is just a percussion sound.
That's played a lot. I mean, there's tunes where that's played.
And
That's
like,
it.
Yeah, sometimes it would just that, like the traditional jazz sound, Jimmy Smith.
So that's cool. You're not going to find anything that's going to duplicate that.
Yeah. So those are some of the basic things, and the other thing, like you'll notice, we've got 1, 2, 3. Well, we got 2 little drawbars here in the middle, and then we've got 3, 4 banks, full banks of drawbars. Okay. The reason we have so many is that we have 2 for each manual. So it's basically was used to set up timbre changes in the middle of a song. So this first bank of drawbars corresponds to this B flat preset. All right.
Notice.
Yep. So there would be nothing there. This bank of drawbars corresponds to the B preset. Okay. Percussion was only available on the upper manual in the B preset. Okay. These middle 2 would be our pedals. Then we'd have the same kind of configuration for the lower manual here, where this set of drawbars would be on our B flat preset, and the last set would be on the B preset. So this would allow players to be able to jump through very quickly to different drawbar registrations. They could be playing one sound, setting up the drawbar registration for the next section of the tune, and then just jump to it.
That's awesome.
So you can hear like a lot of these timbre changes.
So you could have 4 preset notes.
You could, yeah, yep.
So then what are the rest of the black keys for?
So the rest of the black keys were just set presets. The C key is a cancel key, so that will just cancel everything. And then C sharp through the A are all just different presets that came with the Hammond.
Oh.
Okay, so they would be wired in the back. If you look in the back here, there's a big bank of screws with lots of wires connected to it. If you were brave enough, you could go in there and rewire your own presets. But that's what those are for. Typically, you're going to see most Hammond players use the drawbars and jump between the B flat and B presets.
There used to be guys that would rewire, like he said, the preset thing came. I thought of this. you could take your Hammond to guys, I knew a couple guys in New York, you could take your Hammond to the guys in New York and rewire it for, like, say you were playing a lot of jazz things at some club or something, and you didn't want, well, that is not really going to be used much in jazz or anything. So what they do is they rewire all your presets to fit, you know, I mean, usable, workable stuff for, you know, like, that's a workable sound. Some of the stuff is not. You know, so they rewire all the stuff so every sound there was workable, you know, and you take your, usually the guys had a lot of money because it was not cheap.
Yep. Yep.
Same thing with the Rhodes, they do it, same thing.
So that's kind of how this guy is set up. We're going to look at next is the Leslie speaker and take a look at how this works. Okay, Leslie speaker is actually pretty amazing. So let's take a look over here. And you notice we started this thing up. Things started spinning. Okay. Leslie speaker is actually a pretty brilliant design. It's pretty amazing. What we've got is actually two speakers located in this cabinet. Okay, I'm going to pull off this panel here. Maybe.
I suggest anybody ever to go to the internet and just Google Leslie and read a little bit about the Leslie tone cabinet, because although, you know, you might hate my guts, but what they've got to say there is pretty interesting stuff. You know, I mean, they've got, this is a really fascinating design for not just Hammond organs, but for guitars and all kinds of other things. Go through a Leslie. It's pretty cool.
We're going to take a look at that, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
We're going to take a look at that, too. So this Leslie speaker is designed, it's actually fairly simple. We've got a tube amplifier down here. Leslie tube amp. It's actually kind of low wattage. It is a Class AB design, right? For those of you guys that know what that is. But it works pretty well. I mean, we're getting, like I said, a balanced signal into here, and that signal is being fed through a crossover network, which is located here. I have rebuilt the crossover network in here. Originally, it was kind of neat. They came with a wax capacitor. It was actually like a big block of wax with wires coming out. What would happen over time is the values of capacitance would drift, and your crossover point would change. So,
Whoops.
it would change the value of your
Change the value of your speaker.
Yeah, it will change the value of your crossover point. So you'd be getting more in one speaker than you should be, right? Crossover point should be at 800 hertz. All right. So 800 hertz and higher are fed into this horn driver right here. It's a compression driver. All right. So you have a small compression driver that is firing upwards into this horn that you see rotating around. Now you notice that the horn actually comes up and points out like that. A lot of people think that the sound comes out of both of them. It does not. It actually only comes out one. Okay?
The symmetry that they...
Exactly. So in order to allow it to spin properly, we've got both of them counterbalancing. Right? But the sound only does come out of one. And that actually is key. All right? To how the way this guy sounds.
I'm going to interject a small thing. These are dumb things that happen to me on the road. But I remember there's a music store that used to be really famous in New York City on 48th Street called Manny's. I used to shop there all the time when I lived there. This is one of the things that wears out all the time. See that little belt right there? It'd be Hammond guys in line, you know, all of us getting the belt for the top part of the beat, but for the Leslie, because all the Leslies were pretty much, even the 147. I started with this, and I had a big 925, which I had all custom. It was good, break glass at 100 yards. You know, it was ridiculous. But you still use that. You still use that belt, and when that wears out, there's nothing that, you know, there's absolutely nothing that you can use. I mean, we all used to talk about what could you possibly want? No, you got to go and get. Yeah. And they made a fortune probably just selling those belts. Also, when I was in line, a guy told John Lennon, "Hey, stop cutting in line, you son of a bitch." And it was John Lennon in line at Manning's. I was like, wow, that's one of the Beatles. And you don't jump line in Manning's. I don't care who you are. Wait your turn. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No. So 800 hertz and higher are going up into this driver and are being basically directed by this horn that's spinning around, right? So this goes back to Don Leslie's original idea of, hey, let's throw sound around the room, make it sound like it's coming from different places, okay? That was his original idea. And the frequencies going 800 hertz and below are being fed to this 15-inch driver right here. And you notice like this 15-inch driver is facing downward. What we have at the bottom here is a rotating baffle. All right, so if we were to look at take a close look at this, it's a cylinder, but part of it is like kind of scooped out in the middle, right? So the idea is it was trying to take the low frequencies from these bass things and do exactly the same thing. So some interesting things happened when Don Leslie put this together, which probably weren't quite intended. So he did get kind of this effect of being able to project sound from, to different levels. Can you just hold down a key,
Sure.
Craig, and let's just take a listen.
Oh, that's a little loud. Let's ignore it.
So you notice what we're hearing is this gets louder, softer, right? So what we're hearing is every time we hear like that frequency come by, where it's getting louder and softer as we get it comes closer and closer to us. But we're also getting amplitude modulation, but we're also hearing something else, right? Anyone know what that might be?
Phasing.
Not quite phasing. What'd you say? Who said it?
Doppler.
Doppler, right?
Oh,
Which
The whole thing is designed on Doppler effect, yeah?
Yeah, but it was unintentional.
Yeah, I know,
It was
yeah.
completely unintentional. So he ended up with this amplitude modulation, which he thought would happen, right? But then he started getting this frequency modulation, right? So,
Oh, I see, it was a better one than that. Hold on.
yeah. So you get this slight wavering in frequency. So the Leslie speaker ends up adding both frequency modulation and amplitude modulation to the sound. And it makes it really complex because you notice the top spinning around this way. Which direction's the bottom going?
Other way.
Other way, right? So now we've got going around up here and we're going around I can't even do it, right?
Just to pat your belly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been terrible at that. Gabe's got it. So,
What does he win?
I will give him something. We'll give him a CD.
Okay, that's it. Free CDs.
So that adds to the sound. It basically adds to kind of the interaction between these two things, and the fact that this baffle down here has a lot more mass. So when we speed this up and get it going fast, this gets up to speed really quickly. The bottom takes longer, so we have a longer rise time versus the speed ramping up on the bottom, and we have a longer fall time when we slow it down because of the amount of mass that we have on that baffle. That's one of the signature sounds of the Hammond organ.
There's the other signature sound that I always listen for, and it really bothers me if I don't hear it. Hear when I use the switch, there's a little, hear that? That right there? And when you record these clean synthesizers, you don't hear any of the dirt this produces. That dirt and all that crap, and all that stuff, that's the sound of the Hammond and the Leslie.
Yeah.
And when you've got these beautiful tones, like look how perfect it is. Well, yeah, I guess it sounds somewhat like a Hammond, but that's what makes a Hammond sound like all that clunking and clinking
And the whirring.
that and the distortion and the overdrive and all that stuff put together. That's what, and they're trying like hell to duplicate all that stuff. So far, they've come close. They really have.
Yep.
But they haven't come close with the Leslie.
Yeah.
They don't have all the clunking and clinking happening. And that to me is the cool part of the Hammond, because if you're playing some blues, you can hear all that stuff. You know, if you get a Jimmy Smith record or that, you can hear all that stuff taking place, and that's the cool thing about it. I mean, he plays to that. You know.
Hey Kraig, can we hear something with like some of the upper drawbars too, so we can really hear like the high frequencies and spinning up and slowing down?
So anyway, I'll just give you a quick thing. When the old jazz players on the fast tunes used to play like a bass thing, would be down here. Wait a minute. What am I doing? Oh, that's why. There's nothing sounds like that. There's just nothing on the face of the earth. Something like that. Cool. So anyway, that's an old trick. They used to take. It's an old trick with Hammond players. They put either a matchbook, which I don't have. I don't smoke anymore, but I used to have plenty of them. They put a matchbook in between and hold the high note down, and then they'd play. You know, so you'll hear a lot of the old Jimmy Smith records. They'll put a matchbook in there, or you take your hand and hold the note down, and then play, which takes a lot of practice. Play the notes with the other hands. Something like that. So you get the top note held. There's a bunch of tricks like that, but that's a particular one to the Hammond. That's the only reason I did it.
And you notice it gets loud.
It gets real loud. I mean, this organ, I mean, it's really a quiet thing. I mean, you can get real quiet with it. And it can really, I'm not going to demonstrate it, but it can get deafening. It can really just, and the one thing about playing the Hammond is so cool, and I always tell people this, the reason it's so neat is because it's like when you're playing this thing, it's not like playing a little keyboard that's made out of plastic. You know, it's like going to fall apart in your hands and you hit it and it falls over and it goes into the trash. Like this, you're just worried what the stand is going to hold it up. Look at this thing. You can get a couple of dancers on this thing, dancing it, and while you're playing, it's like being at the head of the Starship Enterprise when you're playing it. Because it's just that cool, and it's got some meat behind it. So when you're playing this thing and it's loud, and the band's chugging, it's a real soulful instrument, It's not like
it's quite an experience.
Playing a little chord. I mean, I've gone into the studio and I say, play some Hammond stuff, and they give you a little keyboard. It's like this. I got with what? That? You expect me to play on this like that? And you try, because you need the money, but I mean, but nothing sounds like these things.
It's true. So a couple other things I want to show you guys, and that's kind of specific to this Hammond in general, and I've installed an effects loop on this Hammond. One of the things you need to start thinking about too is when you guys get in the studio, you start working with people, trying to find different sounds and different ways to like kind of enhance sounds or find different sounds that might be unique, you know, something that people haven't done before, right? So I installed an effects loop on this so we could actually apply processing to the Hammond before going to the Leslie speaker. So that is actually done with, excuse me, just 1/4-inch cables. And I actually have the effects loop wired up in the back here. So you have to basically get underneath. You'll see that there's actually 2 1/4-inch jacks in the very bottom of this guy. With nothing plugged in, they're normal, right? So as soon as you plug something in, it will break the normal, and you can actually insert some sort of effects. And they are labeled send and return. So I have my send here. We're gonna try first is, I'm just gonna, just so we can hear some of this stuff, insert like a distortion pedal, so we can hear what that sounds like.
Tube screamer.
Tube screamers, yep.
Who doesn't have a tube screamer though?
Yeah,
Oh my God, I mean, every guitar player. If you don't have a tube screamer, you can't play guitar.
Everybody should have a tube screamer. And, you know, just as a way of kind of experimenting, finding different sounds, different things that may work. You know, the Hammond can be used in a lot of different ways. You know, what we've been hearing is Kraig's been playing a lot of like very traditional type stuff. The Hammond got used quite a bit in a lot of rock.
I'm
So-
never called to play jazz. Let me just tell you that. I'm called in a lot of session work. It's never to play, hey, play some of that cool jazz. No, they want rock. They want, they want Jamaican music, or, whatever stuff he's going to demonstrate here. This is.
Let's try that. Let's try the,
What do you got?
I got just a little bit of distortion. Let's see what happens.
That's cool.
So this could be used in certain ways where you could be, if you're looking to layer something like a guitar part or something like that, it's going to be a great option that's going to sound, traditional. by any
It's a
means.
great solo instrument too. So if you do, instead of a synthesizer doing the solo, so you can solo it with horns in a combination with the distortion. That sounds really nice.
It's a nice texture, right? It's a nice texture that you can add in, and it could work really, really well. Just something that you might want to add in. Another effect that you see get used quite a bit, and one that's really kind of associated with the Hammond organ itself, is reverb. So, believe it or not, Lawrence Hammond was actually one of the first ones that invented the spring reverb. So the spring reverb was first used with his Hammond organs. So I got the distortion off and reverb on. Now, an interesting thing with setting the reverb up like this, so we could easily record the Hammond, right, and then add reverb later, right? But what's kind of cool about this? What happens to that reverb when we spin up the Leslie? So we start modulating the reverb. Classic case in point. You guys ever listen to Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys? Right? That very beginning, the dun, 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 right? What you're hearing there is you're hearing reverb going, it's on the organ, but it's also going through the Leslie as well. So it's being modulated, so it's putting reverb through first. And actually, I'm gonna put this cover back on because it actually sounds a lot better with this on.
Where's the effects loop patched into? Is it before the pedal, or is it right just before the output to the Leslie?
It's actually in the preamp section.
Okay.
So it is just before the output to the Leslie. All right, maybe I won't put this back. Anyway. And then
That doesn't sound that bad.
no, it's okay.
Okay, where
That's how it's. And then finally, what I'll add in here too, which is another one of my favorites, is a little bit of delay. I'll take this guy. I'm just going to daisy chain these together.
Where does he get such marvelous toys? Batman.
Toy box. Yeah, that was Batman. So, you should have.
Bot. That's my new name.
So that should work. You should have delay.
Remember, set your delay to your tempo of the song, and you can come up with some really magical stuff. That's pretty neat.
So another thing you could possibly do, another thing I like doing, so the Hammond can work really well as a pad, right? Just a real like soft pad under things. So I tend to like adding like long delay to it and doing like kind of like a drawbar setting, something along the lines of this. So I can just do.
Go ahead and play it. You're not,
Yeah. I mean,
you're not immune. Sit down, play something.
anyway.
Play this thing.
Yeah, kind of. So I mean, I like to use it. I'm taking over. Just in this way where I've got. So you can do something really subtle. And if you do. Like a longer delay setting. You can get like this real nice pad that works really, really well underneath a lot of things. So it could be a great replacement for a synthesizer, right? You know, instead of using like a cheesy synth pad, I like to layer in like something with the Hammond on those. Cool effects. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and we're not going to set anything up, but is some miking techniques, okay? Just for the Leslie, and my kind of approach to this kind of thing is taking a look at what role the Hammond is going to be playing in the music that you're recording. That is the most important thing that you have to think about, okay? And that usually, for me, that dictates what type of miking technique I use. So if we're doing straight jazz, right? So if you're doing like an organ trio, right? So maybe it's like a classic organ trio where we've got drums, organ, and guitar, right? The role that the organ's playing is pretty central, right? Actually, it's kind of a double role, right? Because the organ is actually the bass as well. So you've got bass going either by pedals or left hand, and then you've got them soloing or comping, whatever they might be doing. So you've got to take that into account. And typically, if it's a trio, if it's like a smaller group like that, the Hammond's going to take up a little bit more space. You've got a little bit more freedom with where you can place that in your mix, right? So typically in that case, a stereo microphone technique on the top of the Leslie is usually a good idea. Traditionally, kind of, you listen to some of the classic Rudy Van Gelder recordings, what they would do is they would set up a stereo pair of 421s. Okay? So 421s on the top at a 90-degree angle. All right? Very rarely will you hear me advise using dynamics in a stereo pair. Okay? But in this case, it works really well. All right? The other thing you have to notice about the Leslie, too, is notice where the speakers are. They're not centered in the cabinet. They're off to one side. Okay? So if you were to try and, you know, like, mic this, what you'd want to do is you'd want to offset your microphones so that they are centered on the speaker. What that's going to give you is a nice motion, stereo motion. You will get that Doppler effect. You'll get that amplitude modulation as well. Of that sound.
The distance from the Leslie is also very important too.
It is.
There's a lot of times people will mic the Leslie for a rock thing with a dynamic mic, like it's like a Shure SM57 or something like that, and then go to the more expensive mics, depending on if they want to do it. Like, you know, they'll use an AKG or something for a stereo pair or whatever. You know, there's 1,000 ways. Like you said, it depends on what you want, what you want out of the music.
Yep. So, you know, with that 90-degree pair like that, it gives you a really nice thing. You also have some freedom with that too, because you can actually basically define like how wide your image is going to be within your recording, within your mix. Okay. For the bottom end, typically, one of my favorite microphones is like the Biodynamic M88. I really like that microphone on the bottom. Some other great choices could be the RE20. Okay, some sort of dynamic that can, you know, basically handle those kind of low frequencies. All right.
What about the? I'm just asking because it's just microphones I have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, there's a wealth of stuff out there I don't have. But what about the U89, the Neumann U89?
Sure. And actually, I was going to mention. So
I like that for the bottom too, because it'll handle it. Something, a big high pressure thing.
Sure. You know, condensers can work well too. You know, but you have to be careful, right? Condensers will pick up a lot of detail, and you kind of have to choose, well, how much of this craziness do I really want getting in there?
Yeah, you can
right?
wind up with, like, you know,
more than your share, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So another thing to be careful of too, you know, typically when you're in the studio, you're going to do this. You're going to pull off these back panels to get to the.
You're going to mic it just like you see here.
Yeah, just like
You're not
this.
going to mic it in front or anything. You're going to put
Yeah.
it just like this.
One of the downfalls with doing this is, well, you do get a clearer sound out the back here. These louvers on the side, they're there for a reason. What they're there for is actually to direct air down, right? So that basically that any kind of air coming out is like being directed down. So you could put a mic there and be fine, not get a lot of wind noise. If you do put it here, you may get wind noise, or it'll sound like a helicopter, right? So you get this lots of low frequency stuff. Pop filters can work, or just moving the microphone back a little bit. Okay.
It's going to be plenty loud.
Yeah.
And it's
Yep.
you're going to get an SPL level that you're going to be happy with.
Yeah,
You know, it's not going to be like, oh, where's the Hammond at? Oh, you'll find out.
Yep. Yep.
It's going to come through just fine.
So some other applications, if you're doing something that's, you know, a jazz thing, and maybe you've got like a larger group, right? Stereo microphone technique can still work. You got to be careful though, because again, you have to think about your stereo image. How are you going to fit all this? What if you've got like a 10-piece group that's playing, and you've got Hammond as part of that, right? That gets really tricky when you start to put like a stereo pair up top, and how am I going to fit that in there, right? A lot of times you might be just better off doing a mono spot on the top and mono bottom and summing those together. We actually did the concert last night like that. It sounded great. It sounded really, really nice. It was it just came out great. So that's an option for that. So you kind of have to make that call. Like, how dense is my mix going to be? Where am I going to be placing this in my mix? Okay. For certain rock things, sometimes you're going to find like the Hammond is actually going to be a pad, right? It's going to be a layer right? A lot of guys, you know, when they talk about Hammond, they'll describe it as being like kind of this warmth that hugs the whole band and keeps the band together, right? I've heard it described like that. So in that case, you know, if you've got some sort of Hammond part that's like that, or the Hammond's not like a featured lead instrument, it's just playing these pads that are kind of integrating with the guitars and everything else that's going on, it makes sense to have kind of a wider image, right?
Here's a good one to go to get that description. Duke Ellington's 70th birthday concert is an organ player by the name of Wild Bill Davis. He's playing with the Duke Ellington Big Band. And every once in a while they'll go, "Ladies and gentlemen, Wild Bill Davis." And he really plays the Hammond to that big band. I mean, if you want to hear a fine example of a guy playing a Hammond that knows what he's doing with a big band, that's the album. You should just Duke Ellington's 70th birthday concert.
Yep.
It's really cool.
Yep. Yep. If you want to go with an even more exaggerated stereo image, you can actually place microphones on the outside, right here. What you have to make sure of, though, if you're going to go for this, you're going to get a really wide. It's almost like putting an AB, right? Putting a Leslie in the middle of an AB pair.
How's it sound?
It's great. It can be really wide.
You're going to get
probably done it. You're going to get a very exaggerated sweep, but that can be fantastic. So if it's,
does the Leslie sound bigger?
Yeah, it sounds bigger. You get a much. You get a much wider like circular.
So you use
motion.
2 microphones or 3?
3 total, right? So,
Okay, so
out here, what you have to be aware of, though, is that you want to be equidistant from the speaker. So remember that it's offset. So close here, a little further away here. You want to compensate for that so you're equidistant. Otherwise, it's going to be offset a little bit. Right?
Wow, okay.
Okay. So not only is the amplitude going to be offset, but your time of arrival is going to be offset, right? So we want to make sure that those 2 things are exactly the same. Okay, and then you could actually even do the same thing on the bottom rotor as well. So you could have stereo top, stereo bottom. Remember, they're rotating in opposite directions, right? Sum those together, you can get some really cool stuff going on. The interesting thing with using this in a rock setting, though, is typically you're not going to have a lot of low frequency content, right? It's typically going to be higher stuff that you're going to hear. Right, so like exactly like using the delay and creating a pad, you'd want to create some sort of big swirling stereo effect for that. That could work really, really well. Okay. Another thing I should probably mention too, ambient miking. Right, the Leslie's meant to fill up a room. Can anyone think of like where the best possible spot would be to put an ambient mic, so we're just getting reflected sound? We just want reflected sound.
Something pointing away and right at the speaker.
What's that?
So it's like a microphone pointing this way, but like right at the speaker.
Yeah, right. So you're on the right track. Like, what if you put an omni right here? Right? So put an omnidirectional microphone right here. So all this sound is being sent out that way. What you're going to get here is you're just going to get reflected sound back. Okay? That can be a really cool way to get a bit of room tone to your Leslie. All right? If it's in a nice space, it can work really, really well. Okay? So, and you guys...
It'd be kind of hard too, wouldn't it?
What, to put the omni right here?
Yeah, would that be hard?
Nah, mic stand. Right there.
But I mean...
Good to go.
Reflected sound, but if you've got equidistant walls, well, how
That'd be great. That's what you want.
Work? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know more than I do about the recording.
So
thing.
with the ambient miking, you really want to pick up that reflected
I'm
sound.
the world's greatest hobbyist engineer.
No, I don't know.
I'm a hobbyist. Engineer. I've worked with some great engineers. I'm a hobbyist engineer. So trying to learn like little goofy things, like that. I don't know. I've never done that.
That's a goofy thing.
That's it. I'll walk away tonight. I know that.
So that's an option. Like we're just picking up ambient sound. I mean, you could do like a pair further away, but you are going to get some correlated sound in like a pair that you space further away, unless you point them facing away, like Grace mentioned. That will work as well. So lots and lots of options. So basically, what I want you guys to take away from all this is like how this thing works, and what just kind of like plant a seed about like all the amazing things that you guys can do with this now. The possibilities are really endless. So cool.
I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Who is you might know the answer to this. If anybody knows the answer, because this reminds me of a story. The guy that runs New York University's music department.
You talking about the Clive Davis School?
No.
Used to be
Name some names.
Anderson.
And that's it. That's it.
Yep.
Jim Anderson. I saw him speak. Because I played with Tim, he did work with Joe Henderson. I did a thing with Joe Henderson, but he did Joe Henderson's album, big band album, and so I was talking to him.
He's played it for us.
But this guy was a genius engineer, and he won I don't know how many Grammy Awards that
Jim
year.
Anderson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to one of the guys from the Audio Engineering Society, which I went to the thing. Tried to be a smart ass to him and said, well, what about the such and such on Jimmy Smith's organ? And he says, well, let's see now. The one I won the last Grammy for was Angel Eyes, and he just buried the guy. I mean, if I was that guy, I'd have shot myself right in the mouth. I mean, you don't go up to Jim Anderson and tell him, try to put him on the spot now. He's just done too much stuff.
No, he's too good for that.
Oh, he's too big, yeah. He's just... Yeah. Just like a load of Grammys on the.
He's come in here and done lectures for us.
He's a great guy. He really
and he brought the Joe Henderson album with him too, and played some stuff.
Well, Tim, what's the guy that used to play the Blue Wind? I played a bunch of stuff. He's a trumpet player. I can't remember. We used to work all the time with him, but he was on that big band. Anyway. So go ahead.
It's great. So, any questions from you guys about any of this stuff?
That sound there, that's what we can't do. I'm not going to do it because that's going to bother your ears. But it really gets that thing. That overdrive sound is inherent to this instrument. That's really a cool thing. So it's not like, my God, it doesn't sound clean like a synthesizer. That's one of the really cool sounds that this instrument has.
So in the normal setting, what you can do if you want that sound, you would have the normal setting here, and you would actually turn the volume knob up on the Leslie amplifier, probably to about 3 o'clock. Normally I keep it at 12. 12 is a good kind of compromise. In the concert last night, we had it at 12. It was still getting a little bit of distortion on some louder passages. It sounded cool though. It works pretty well.
3 will give it to you.
Yeah, if you crank this up to 3 o'clock, that's like rock territory right there, and that will just distort like mad. But you have to put it in the normal setting because that basically is like feeding. You're basically driving the front end of the Leslie amplifier. Mm. Leslie amps were never hi-fi to begin with, right? They're Class A Bs. The zero cross distortion is probably ridiculous. So
they're a tube amp.
They are a tube amp. Yep. So they're going to have that distortion characteristic, but it's very unique. So, but that's how you would get that. Yeah. Yes.
The little numbers on the levelers, what does it do and how does it tell it?
So the little numbers, so it's basically just to recall your settings, right? So like when we were reading off like the registrations,
right?
So they're just basically a series.
Come over here and take a look at it. You can see the little numbers right here.
Yep. So
right. So how does that change the sound?
Okay, well, watch.
It's like a volume control, right? So your volume's on
more numbers,
less
1.
So each drawbar is just a volume control for that particular harmonic.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's all it is. And the numbers just help you recreate your settings, right? So it's kind of like, like the detented gain controls on the Millennium. Same kind of thing. So, okay.
I know the best way to listen to this instrument is through the Leslie, and obviously sounds amazing through there. But what kind of sounds can you get if you put it through a different kind of speaker of some kind?
So you could take this Hammond organ and you could run it into one of our guitar amplifiers, right? So you could actually use the effect send here and run that into one of our guitar amplifiers. And
at the same time you go through a Leslie, that could be pretty devastating.
It could be devastating. The only issue with our setup is that the effect send will break the normal, right? So it's gonna be one or the other in our case.
Could you split the cable?
You could split the cable. Yep. So there's options. Talk to me before you try that. Okay. But that's definitely a way to do it. So a classic one, if you guys ever listen to Deep Purple, John Lord, he played his Hammond organs through, like guitar stacks. He did have a Leslie, but he played through giant Marshall stacks as well and had just crazy amounts of distortion. And he had,
most of the Marshall stacks at those concerts are all fake. There's only one real. Nobody really uses all that. I mean, they bring in lots of Marshall stuff.
well, I would if I was. I've never had that opportunity.
I used to know really well, but then nobody's going to believe this. But there's a guy, the rock and roll guy, used to be with Black. I think it was Black Sabbath. Ronnie Dios. What's his name?
Tony Iommi?
No. What's his name?
Ronnie James Dio.
Ronnie James Dio was
the singer.
Real little guy. That's the guy that I was buddies with, and he died here recently. And my one rock guy
Was
that I
Ozzy?
did, no, but my one rock guy that I knew, and he died.
He was a rock guy. They don't last.
But there's a lot of people saw me at the airport. They came up to me and said, "How do you know him? My God, you don't know. You're kidding." I said, I believe it or not, me and this guy just got along. We always caught each other on some kind of flight. I was going out to Los Angeles, and we were always and we caught each other at the airport. So we started talking to each other, about different things. And then he dies. And we saw each other at the NAMM show. And I saw him, and he came in on a limo, and he says, "Hey, you want to take a look inside, ride around in the limousine?" I said, "Yeah, sure," because I never get a ride around a limousine.
Free limo ride. I mean,
That's right.
can't go wrong.
So he's a big rock guy, and then he dies. That's it. That's into that.
Damn rock guys. He's dying. Any other questions?
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Yes.
Actually, I've got two, which are both pretty minor things. One is more a practical application because, like I was at the concert last night, which was awesome, but I couldn't actually see much of what the guy was doing from where I was sitting.
Yep.
If you got a jazz player that's walking a bass, are they doing that in the keyboard or the pedals?
Depends on the player. Some people are comfortable walking on the pedals.
Let me show you how it's. Let me show you what.
I think George Culligan was mostly doing it on the left hand.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot of different
So
ways
usually
to
like
do it.
lower manual, left hand.
If a slow tune will use the bass down here, like you'll use. What am I doing here? Oh yeah, that's why. Let's see. So. You on a slow tune or a ballad, a lot of times you'll use the bass down here. You can accompany with the bass, but on a fast tune, most of the organ players would use this. You'll see Jimmy Smith or one of those guys. They'll tap the bass every once in a while for the accents,
Downbeat or
A lot of times they'll just kind of pump, they'll.
George was doing that as well last night.
But they'll, for the most part, he was right. You'll play the like. See, you'll boom, boom, boom. But most of the playing is going to be done with the left hand.
Yep.
So the fast stuff, because there's no way you can do. I mean, I used to try to do it with make an ass of yourself.
And then my other question is very much the opposite. It's more a technical thing. You mentioned you could plug a guitar into that thing, but that's a very unique looking 6-pin cable.
Thank you, Eric, for asking that, because that's the next thing I was going to talk about, because I forgot about it.
The Morley. Oh no, that's a Trek. What is that? A Trek?
A Trek 2.
Cool.
So this contraption is a device for using the Leslie without the Hammond. Okay? So the way this guy works, and I'll demonstrate this real quick. I'm going to turn Hammond off. Nice and quiet now. Still smells like the 60s back here. I love it.
How old is this organ? I know the cabinet and the organ are different ages. But
I think it's a mid-60s.
Yeah, probably 65, 64.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
When did they stop making this?
1975 was the last real.
like tube-based B3, and then they're still making digital versions.
They made, let's see if I wrote that down, because it's something that got me. It was like let's see, what was the last B3?
I thought it was 75.
465, 70. Maybe I don't have it.
There it is.
I wrote it down someplace else. Maybe I just dreamt I saw it. Well, like I said, the X66 in May '67 only had 12 tone wheels. It was the flagship, but but Hammond wanted to push that, the X66, and I kind of wanted one, but wasn't sure. I was a little kid, but I already had a Hammond B3. I couldn't afford an X66 because it was real expensive. But they had that, but the salesman didn't. They were really pushing that organ. But this is really the one you want.
Ooh, Leslie, this is gonna be cool.
Yep. So what I've done is I've taken the 6-pin cable, I've connected it to the Trek 2 pedal, right? This is a 122, okay? So you notice there's like 4 different types of connectors here. There's one that says 122 type only. There's one that says 147 type only. Do not plug it into the 147. You will blow up our speaker, our Leslie. All right, they're very different, okay? 147 is a completely different wiring schematic, but it uses the same plug. So just be careful.
Why would they do that?
Okay.
You're funny.
Poor planet.
They are funny that way. I'm going to plug this into the high input. All right. That's typically the one you're going to want to use is a high level input. And you have on the back, you've got a tone control, which should stay around like 12 o'clock, and you've got a level control. I'm going to turn that all the way down for right now. Okay. You can turn on power. And that will fire up.
You back up a little bit because you're sure.
And
It seems to be working.
It works. So this would be a way to get. Let's see if we can get a little bit more. Did I want the high level or low level? I'm gonna find out real quick. Let me try. Turn this down again. Maybe it is the low level one. Sorry. That's more like it, I think.
There we go.
Yeah, so my bad. It's the low level one. And you can actually control the speed with this switch right
Oh,
here.
cool.
So you can do.
Tell me that doesn't sound good. I mean, that's just,
That's cool.
Okay, so this opens up a lot of possibilities, right? If you guys want to do some sort of processing, say you're doing a mix even, right? You could actually use a reamp box, run line level out here through your reamp box into this Trek pedal, into your Leslie, mic it again, bring it back in, right? This would be a great way to, even with this on slow, you're gonna get that motion, right? Sum that back in to with your original signal. You can get some fantastic effects. You don't have to use it on the fast tremolo speed. It can be small. Some very common uses for this: electric guitar played through the Leslie. Sounds fantastic, right?
David Gilmour did a lot of that.
David Gilmour actually always had some sort of rotating speaker in his rig, and he would blend that in with his sounds. If you guys ever listen to some of David Gilmour's famous guitar solos, there's usually some sort of rotating speaker blended in. It was always part of his rig. Lots of other things. Playing bass through a Leslie speaker can be a really, really cool sound. Putting vocals through a Leslie speaker. Okay? There's some fantastic vocals out there. Listen to the Beatles. Anything to that. You're going to hear tons of stuff put through a Leslie speaker. So there's a lot of tone shaping options here. So, but this is how you would do this. Okay? Very, very cool.
So are there only 2 switches on the speeds for the Leslie? Or you can't go in between them? It's just either fast or slow?
It is fast or slow. Some Leslies will have a brake option.
That would stop. Where it would stop.
Where it would stop. This particular one does not have that. So like a lot of the newer ones will have that kind of thing, but this one does not.
Are they still making Leslies?
They are. They are. You can still buy a 122 with the tube amp. Pretty much, virtually the design is almost unchanged.
Suzuki.
It still sound as good?
Suzuki,
Yeah.
Suzuki
What?
company owns Hammond now, and they own the Leslie company. So you can buy the Leslie and Hammond are both owned by Suzuki, but you can still buy a 122 and a 147.
You sure can. The one-
Motion Sound makes some great stuff. I met the owner of the Motion Sound company, and
Yep.
they went bankrupt and they came out of it and everything, but he really makes some nice stuff. You know, if you don't have, this takes quite a bit to haul this around. This is like, you know, if you're playing gigs, coming in with one of these is gonna, all of your bandmates are gonna be pretty, unless you got roadies, they're gonna be pretty pissed off about the third or fourth time you show up with this. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So some pretty cool stuff. You know, just ways to kind of shape tones. There's so many possibilities here that you could get into. It takes a little bit of extra work to set all this stuff up, but believe me, it's worth it. It's really good stuff. Any other questions?
Is there another Leslie in the jazz studio? Like, could we do stereo Leslies? I'm serious.
There is not. However, if you do want to try that, let me know, and you can come grab mine from my apartment. And
Do we have another track?
Oh, by the way, David Gilmour
don't.
does most of his
However,
recording
it
in
can
a
work.
boat on the Thames River outside of London. And he's got a room on this barge that he had rebuilt. He's Pink Floyd, so I mean, he's got hundreds of millions of dollars. It's got just a bunch of Leslies in it. And it's like a wall of Leslies. And he just goes in there and, you know, and drinks and listens to himself play, I guess. I mean, I don't know what he does, but he doesn't really care because he's Pink Floyd. So, you know, but that's, you know, you talk about one or two Leslies, he's got a whole room full of them. They're all stacked up, all put in there by somebody that knows a lot about electronics, and they look really nice. And
He actually built a lot of his own too.
did he really?
Yeah, so he used to use a Yamaha variation of this, which was actually, it had like actual 6x9s, 3 6x9 speakers that spun on an axis. It was really kind of a crazy design, but he used to use those as well. There's
How
a
much are
lot of
these?
different
When you're
variations.
David Gilmour, you're going to get away with a lot of stuff that the normal guy's not going to get. You know, he's just unlimited money.
Yeah. What'd you say, Grace?
How much are these?
Like a Leslie speaker like this? So if you were to buy a vintage one like this, you're probably looking at, for one in good shape, anywhere from $1,500 to $1,800.
Wow,
Sometimes.
you really even know the price of the stuff.
knew,
That's
yeah.
cool, yeah.
And new would
Somebody has
be
to buy all this stuff.
new would be more.
New is about $2,200.
I'm going to say 22 and 25, somewhere in
Yeah.
there.
Yep. So.
How about a good one of those?
So.
7 to 10,000.
Yeah. Yep. That's accurate.
And you can get, and they're going to charge. There's a lot of guys that are charging like ridiculous. I mean, you'll see them on the internet. Just go for. I mean, I just sit there and laugh at them because I mean, ain't nobody's going to pay for it. Like it's like that Harris guy that runs Pawn Stars. He says, you know, you can charge anything, but see, somebody's going to pay for it. You know, so 7 to 10,000 is about right for
Yep.
those.
Yep.
Good one.
And you know, you have to.
That's perfect. That's in really nice shape too.
Yeah.
That's a really nice organ.
Yeah, this one's been all fixed up, and we've gone through this. And it's 100%. You have to be careful when buying these things because a lot of them have been through a lot of wear and tear.
You can get a vacuum sweeper and clean out everything, and it can look just like this one. But if you got to get a guy that really knows his electronics to go through it and say, put
So-
a seal of approval on it and say this Hammond is really in good shape. Because like you said, you could get a real nice one and everything, and they could put a bunch of electronic crapola in there, and you get a nightmare.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that happens in the tone wheel generator. So I mentioned how we have, you know, there's 96 tone wheels and there's 91 that actually generate tones. Every single one of those tone wheels has a filter network. Okay, so one of the things that they tried to eliminate was they tried to get the tone coming off from each one of those tone wheels to be as pure as possible. So they would actually basically tune a bandpass filter for every single one of those tone wheels, right? So a bandpass filter is what? A combination of what?
Inductor and capacitor.
Yeah, right. So we could do it that way. So basically like a high pass and low pass, right? Where we're just allowing a bandwidth through. So over the years, what happens, especially with the capacitors, is that those values shift, right? So every single tone wheel generator was voiced individually. So every filter was like kind of specifically like wired up for that. So over years, like those values shift, and you get what is called leakage. So it's very possible for tone from one tone wheel to leak into another one. And so, all these organs have slightly different sounds because of that, because of these values that drift. And there's certain runs, like certain capacitor types that they use that are better. The very early ones had paper capacitors, which tended to drift a lot more. They also use they started to use like wax ones later on. Like you'll find ones that have red capacitors, those are really desirable because the values didn't shift anywhere near as much. So the one I have at home is actually a red capacitor Hammond. It's actually very, very nice. So I actually think it sounds better on this one. But
You don't have a pipe organ in your living room, do you?
no, I don't. Not yet.
Oh God, I was just thinking,
I did get the offer once, so.
that's all.
And I was like, no, I can't do it.
You want to see a grown man cry? Just tell me you bought a pipe organ.
Yeah.
I'll just break down there.
Excellent. Any other questions, guys? Yes.
Similar to what I asked before, I didn't get a chance to actually look at that cable, but how would you connect that to something external if you didn't have the effects loop installed that you have?
So in that case, you would actually have to buy like some sort of adapter, right?
Okay.
Yeah, you would have to actually find some sort of interface box, because essentially like the signal that comes out of the organ, like I said, out of the Hammond is a balanced signal, and it's a much higher level that's optimized for going into this.
But if Hammond didn't like the Leslie amp, how come they have the same cable? Is that just later on?
That's added on. Yeah, so that was added on. That was a kit you would buy when you would buy the
This
Leslie.
is not the original cable that came with it. Over the years, these cables changed. I mean, they were big, fat, clunky things to start with these giant tongs. They got slicker and nicer like this.
Yeah.
As you get towards 73, 70, 65, 67, 70, you got nice ones. But in the beginning, they were pretty clunky, things.
So like my Hammond at home was all original and did not have any kind of interface to hook up a Leslie speaker. So I actually had to wire up my Hammond specifically for the 122. So I had to get a 122 and then install a kit that would allow me to connect it. So that's how that works.
Do you have an effects loop on that one too?
I do not. I wish I did, but I don't. It's okay. But
yeah, just a Hammond. I mean, you have to live with that.
Darn, it's okay. But the one nice thing is I can hook it up to 2 different Leslies at the same time. So I can actually, and I have 2. I've got a new one and an old one, and I can set them both up.
Stereo.
Yeah.
I mean surround.
Joel can do his stereo. It gets way too loud. My neighbors would revolt. They come after me like pitchforks.
My neighbors, it bothers their hunting dogs.
Yeah. So, great. Any other questions, guys?
Before you all leave, I have a CD of me.
Yeah.
And this is just me.
Yep. This is a great CD.
And it's just me playing Hammond. It's called Hammond Eggs. So I'm gonna give everybody one, and and they make great coasters after you're done listening to it.
Thank you.
And you can make frisbees, and you can shoot it with a shotgun. That's another thing. It's just like ping like that.
So guys, let's give Kraig a hand for helping us out.
Ed,
Thank you, sir. So thank you so much, and thank you guys for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this.